live in a video for Silence is Killing Our Children around there's been some disclosures happening across some of our Indigenous communities in BC where groups of young women are naming their abusers within communities, and there's a few lists that are circulating on social media. And so for the past week there's been a lot of different things coming up for people, and so I've been asked to do some help with that, and I felt like I needed to do a video to address some of it because it's been really tough for some of the young people who have decided to stand up.
Was that a live video on Instagram or was it on?
I did a live video on Facebook, on my Facebook, and then I'm also going to be uploading it to my YouTube.
Well, I just wanted to chat with you today. I read your book. It hit home in a lot of spaces for me, just in terms of I've really just recently started connecting with my roots and with the elders in our community, and just hearing everyone's stories is super powerful. And for me, I like to creative write. So to be able to see another writer be able to put those words on paper, it's really, really amazing. So what I'm trying to focus on right now for our youth is the mental health support as well as our traditional support, and really just trying to get our youth in our community motivated and excited and feel like they have people to support them and they have all the resources that they need. Because this time, obviously being COVID, it's hard for kids to kind of feel like they can reach out and stuff, right? Just because there's so much going on. So I'm really just trying to be that advocate for our youth and just trying to say that it's okay to reach out. It's okay to talk about these things, right? And obviously with school coming up too, it's going to look a lot different than previous years. So reaching out to everyone, seeing what everyone's advice is and how we can support these youth. And
Thank you. I mean, it's something that we're struggling with right now. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and we're still really unsure of how to support her. She already deals with anxiety, and she has talked to people about that. And we do find different ways to support her, either through counseling and therapy or through smudging and praying, and teaching her how to be mindful. It's just been so hard because so many people are being affected, with the global pandemic, and learning how to function in this world, and really kind of being stuck with themselves. Outside of this, it was almost easier to deal with mental health issues because we could find ways to avoid or distract, either through our relationships with other people or by just keeping busy and finding ways to get out and do things that kept us distracted from dealing with ourselves. And I think one of the hardest things for people to do who are dealing with mental health issues, I've dealt with anxiety and depression, and I was also diagnosed with cyclothymia in my early 20s, which is a form of bipolar. And so I've dealt with a lot of these things, and really learning how to kind of address some of the things that have held me back. And the crappy part about it is that it's stuff we don't want to deal with, that builds up and causes discomfort in our bodies and causes the anxiety. I know when I hold in my feelings, I get anxiety attacks. And I know when I allow myself to cry, the anxiety goes away. The attack goes away. The numbness and the feeling of not being able to breathe and my body tensing up goes away when I allow myself to feel. And learning to be gentle with myself. I wish that when I was younger, I had people telling me that I wasn't crazy, that the things that I was going through is what a majority of people go through. I work with professionals and politicians and people with PhDs and people who are highly educated. And people that I really look up to. And as I get to know them, and because I'm such an open communicator, start to learn that they too, struggle with mental health issues, and it's something that they have to work through on a day-to-day basis. And I wish people would have been more open about it when I was younger, because I was really hard on myself. And I did, I didn't want to tell people what I was thinking or how I was feeling or what I was going through, because I didn't want them to not trust me. I felt that people wouldn't hire me or want to work with me. And then as I got older and, I became a teen mom, I didn't want anybody to take my kid away from me. And so really learn to hold those things inside. And I think the biggest thing that we can do for ourselves and for each other is to create spaces where we can talk about how we're feeling and talk about our fears, um, so that other people can step up and say, yeah, me too. Even, these spaces I've been able to hold virtual circles online, and have people just share. And, I've done some vicarious trauma and resiliency training with nurses and health professionals who are working on the front lines right now. And they utilize these spaces to cry and to talk about their fears that they're not allowed to talk about at work, and that they don't want to bring home to their families because they don't want to seem like they're not professional, and they don't want to scare their families. And so it's so important that we find ways to let things out that we're holding inside, um, because the more that we hold on to it, the more it creates that that negative energy, that sickness, that, just that ugly feeling you get when you're going through an episode, you know, and it's because we haven't found an avenue to let it out. And one of my therapists told me when I was 19, he said 50% of your mental illness is because of trauma that you need to work through, and 50% of it is chemical imbalance. And so I'm going to put you on a very low dose of medication, and we'll work through your trauma. And as I've worked through my trauma over the years and actually dealt with it and talked about it and put a name to it, I don't need to be on medication anymore. There's moments where I feel like maybe I need to when it gets really hard, especially over the last few months. But I've managed to just really talk it out, even when it's been uncomfortable, even when I didn't want to, not even with my own husband, because I didn't want to be a problem, or I didn't want to have him worry about me. But I had to push past myself to take care of myself so that I could be a good wife, I could be a good mother. And so, I think from me, I think that's the sharing that I love to do most with young people, is find those people who are willing to just listen, just listen and share, and validate the feelings and validate that, and that you're not alone. So
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think even for myself, just finding those different outlets, like you said, like for me, it would be talking to a friend or talking to my grandma on my mom's side was always a great person to talk to because she was a lot older and she just listened, and it was always good to know that she wasn't judging what I was saying. She just gave her listening ear, and that was always great for me. But it wasn't until I lived with my auntie, and she said, well, this is how I smudge in the morning, or this is how I go and pick some sweet grass, and this is how I do this. And I started to see the benefits for how that makes me feel. As a Métis woman, I decided that maybe that would be kind of another outlet for me. And it's been great. It's been awesome to have that support and to know that I can call my elders and talk to them. And, I always get one of our lovely elders loves to bead, and I would bead with her every Thursday. And I would always say, well, I'm not great at this, but I'll try, right? So she says, as long as you try, that's all that matters, you know? We made, they're supposed to be making mittens, and we turned them into purses because it didn't, it didn't quite work out. But it was just being there and being able to talk with them and just learning those things that their moms taught them and hearing the stories of this is how my mom would do it. And that's just generations of history and teachings. So it's really amazing to also branch out to people in different communities too. Like yourselves, I know being in BC might have a different kind of teachings than they would in Alberta, but it was funny when I also talked to the same elder. She said that her sister here is in Qualicum, so she's on the island. And she said, "Oh, I love that you're out there. I used to go to the shopping mall all the time." And, so there's still, even though being in Canada, there's different regions and things like that, like we still have our footsteps within each province. And I think that's really important for me to tell our youth that no matter where they want to go, they still have those roots and they still have those elders and those connections. And like I said, with my project all being online, I really want to provide that support for our youth. I seen that you do have a virtual training tomorrow. Is that what you were talking about, the circles, or is that something different?
Yeah, so I do the virtual training I'm doing tomorrow is to teach people how to facilitate safe spaces in the work that they do. And so some people come because they want to learn how to facilitate and create safe space, and because they're a facilitator, or they want to do it for their organization, or they want to, even within government, they want to learn how to do things differently. And then some people do it just for their own personal growth, because a lot of it is one of the conditions for cultivating safe space is self-awareness. And so a lot of people are still in that learning and understanding self-awareness. And so, they take it for personal reasons, but um, it's to help people facilitate those circles and to facilitate safe spaces for people to share.
Within your community right now, is there any youth that are like doing any kind of community development or research? Like I know it's been a huge push in Alberta right now for the youth to be a part of the conversation. So I was just wondering in your community if there was any youth that are kind of doing the same thing.
Work in the community. And whenever we put together planning teams around, we actually have a lot of youth stepping up to work with our natural resources department, um, which is a kind of a result of the work done around our comprehensive community plan and our land use plan. And we had a lot of youth involved in that work. Um, but and it's actually the youth right now that are stepping up to address sexual harassment, assault, and rape in our communities. And so I feel like we've kind of always had a strong youth movement within our community.
And for yourself, Elaine, what are the things that you see for yourself in the future?
Well, I'm 42, and the whole, I've traveled across Canada for the last 20 years working in communities, and I'm getting to the point where I want to stay home. And because of COVID, I've been able to stay home and be with my kids. It's been, I love this, I love being, because there's been years and months where I've been home 8 days out of the month, and the rest of it's been on the road. So I love this. I love being at home with my kids, and I love that I've been able to continue to work so that we can pay the rent and feed them. Um, so, my goal is to keep writing. That's been my lifelong dream. And so I want to keep writing, and I want to keep finding ways to support people to do the work that I'm doing, that they call on me for, to help train them do the work that I do, so that I can stay home and they can do the work, because there's so much work that needs to be done across this country with Indigenous communities, both on and off reserve. And I just want to see there's enough work for everybody. and to let especially youth know, I'm so passionate about planning, and it's such a unique experience to get into the planning field. I don't have a degree. I dropped out of school in grade 9, and so but I now own my own planning company, and so I don't have a planning degree, and I like to share that the only thing you need is the ability to listen, to be able to listen and pay attention, and to capture stories and share it back. And so, I would love to get to the point where I can just stay home and write my books and be with my family and see this work being done, um, by young people.
What are kind of the highlights of having your own business, Elaine?
I love it. I always felt like a quitter because I would get a job and I couldn't stay there, and I just wasn't passionate about it. And it's just because I was an entrepreneur. I always wanted to challenge myself and do different things and be involved. And as I worked on a project and could see an offshoot of it, like, oh, I could also do that, and have the freedom to kind of focus on the type of work I wanted to do without having to stay on one path. And so that's been my favorite part of being a business owner, is the ability to pick and choose the work that I want to do, that I'm good at, that I can contribute to, that makes me feel good. And when I feel and do and do that type of work, then I'm able to do good work that I'm proud of. And then people want to continue to work with me. Um, it's a lot of time, building a business and building a company. In my late 20s and early 30s, I had way more energy to do so. And so, but I loved the work, so I couldn't complain. But it does take a lot of self-discipline to be able to do the things that others don't want to do, and to do the things that, because you're the janitor, you're the administrator, you're the boss, you're everything and all things as you're starting a business. And so to also be humble, to say that's not in my job description. We have to do those things anyway. And so, even if it's showing up early and cleaning and setting up, and just being open and willing to do anything, I think that's been really a key success to people who want to get into business. But yeah, there's just so many perks to it that I love. And being able to take time off and decide when and where I do the work. The other thing is sometimes I was a morning person where I could wake up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning and be my most productive. And then other times I was sleeping in a little bit later and then staying up late and doing my work from 11 p.m. until 4 a.m., because my kids were sleeping and I could focus on the work. And so, when you're employed by someone, you don't always get the luxury of working in your own time. And so that's the other piece, is, being able to do that. And then creating a company where we've hired people and understanding that people work in different ways, and just supporting them in their health. And, if you need time to not do anything, to not feel pressured to do it. People always feel the need to hustle and be productive, and they're super hard on themselves when they can't. Especially now, we're in a global pandemic. We're constantly being traumatized and triggered by so many different things. There's some horrible things going on in the world, and there's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself and taking a break. And so that's the other piece, is that I'm able to do that for myself so that my mental health is intact, and we're able to allow space for our employees to also do the same for themselves. Because I didn't have a grade 12, I found an opportunity that didn't require a grade 12, and that was the Aboriginal Youth Internship Program, which is now called the Indigenous Youth Internship Program. Not sure how they're doing it this year because of COVID, but if you haven't heard of it, look it up. It's a really great opportunity. So the Indigenous Youth Internship is in its 13th year, but it's a 12-month internship where you spend 9 months with a government organization and then 3 months with an Indigenous organization. And as the intern, you get to choose. where you want to be. And so I was actually accepted. Um, and I think more because of my political connections and who I grew up with, as opposed to my education. Um, but I ended up working for the Ministry of Children and Families, and then I did my 3 month term with Aboriginal Family Accord, which no longer exists. But when I was done, the Ministry of Children and Families asked me to come back. And so I was the only intern who was asked to come back. And as I was working in youth engagement, and they said, if you go for your BSW, we will support you and we'll help pay for it, and you can work towards moving your way up within the ministry. And I had to really think about it. Um, a lot of people have given me advice to not go back to school because of the teachings I received from my grandmother. Are so ingrained in me that they told me the advice I received for me was that people hire you because you don't think within this box, and they hire you for that. And if you go to school, you're going to have to learn how to put your thoughts into this box to get through, and I don't know if you want to do that. And so I actually decided not to, not just because of that, but because I knew that I wouldn't be able to work within the government system around children and families. It was too heartbreaking, and the legislation was just too, and the policies were just too tough to work within. And so I left before that happened.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time today, Elaine.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you.
Yeah, you as well.
Okay,
All
bye.
right, bye.